Vegemite, an Aussie icon made right here in Melbourne. It has been said that if you don't like Vegemite, you're not an Australian.
Everyone loves Vegemite.
You're not an Aussie if you don't.
I really like Vegemite and butter on toast.
Vegemite for lunch is the best.
For my whole life, as long as I can remember, every day I've eaten Vegemite.
Tastes like Australia.
I was born here in Australia. I'm a true blue Aussie, and I think Vegemite on toast for breakfast is just the worst. Not all Australians like Vegemite, but lots of us do. Apparently 80% of households in Australia have a jar of Vegemite in their pantry, including us. I think the key is you need to have been brought up eating it. If you didn't have it as a child, I don't think there's much hope for growing to love it. Excuse me. Oh, I still have the taste of it in my mouth. The factory that makes this stuff is here in Melbourne on Vegemite Way. It makes more than 22 million jars of this stuff every year. So it is very popular. But despite their best efforts to export it overseas, 98% of those jars are consumed right here in Australia. The rest of the world just doesn't seem to get it.
What is Vegemite?
Vegemite is a thick, black Australian food spread made from leftover brewer's yeast extract with various vegetable and spice additives.
You're gonna hate it.
Is it really that bad?
I want to read this. Yes. Down the hatch. People like this?
That's how you do it, share like.
Hugh Jackman will tell you that's because you're all eating it wrong. You're not supposed to eat it by the spoonful, just put a little bit on toast with butter.
Maximum. What? Maximum Vegemite. No more than that. Right?
Much better.
I'm not sure that works for my palate.
Tried it yet?
No.
No? Okay.
These are great. Have you tried these?
No.
Spitting it out the bitch.
Yeah.
It's so salty, I'm crying.
I am convinced that those jars that are sold internationally surely must be sold to Australians who are living abroad and missing their Vegemite, because no one else seems to be into it, which is something that I think Australians are quite proud of, that they like it and nobody else does. I'm on a mission today to, number one, see if we can figure out the secret recipe for this stuff. How is it actually made? What's in it? And number two, to see if using the key ingredients in it, can we make something else? Can we alter it and change the recipe?
There's not a thing that I would change.
To make something that's a little more palatable for me and hopefully the rest of you. Last year, Dave and I went along to the 100th birthday celebration of Vegemite. I have never been to a party before where I wasn't tempted to eat anything. I didn't want anything that they had on offer. Even the donuts had Vegemite in them, and Dave wasn't even keen on those. The Vegemite recipe is a closely guarded secret, and at the party we didn't get to go onto the factory floor. It was just a party, but we did get to speak to some interesting people.
And you said it wasn't very popular when it came out.
No one really liked it, and it's an acquired taste, as you know, but over the years it eventually caught on with the public, so it took a little while, but it got there.
My grandfather that invented Vegemite 100 years ago. Fred Walker, the Melbourne entrepreneur, headhunted my grandfather, who was a brilliant scientist, specifically to come up with a similar product, if not, and make it better.
And how long did it take from woe to go?
It took the better part of a year. Started from scratch, nothing, and then over the process of the year, through trial and error, he came up with the product that we now know and love today.
I don't have a year to figure this out. I only have a week and a half, so I might be in trouble here. But I do have the ingredients list, which, very similar to Marmite, the first ingredient is yeast extract. And I know from talking to people that that yeast is coming from the waste product from making beer, another thing that Australia seems to love that I personally don't like. But to make beer, you basically need a sugary solution, and that sugar is coming from wheat and barley. And then you also add some hops. Now, hops are the flowers from hops plants, and they're added to keep the beer fresher, and they're a major contributor to the flavour, smell, and the bitterness of the beer. And then you add to that mixture a tiny little packet of yeast, and then you leave it for a week. And the yeast gets to work turning that sugar into carbon dioxide bubbles and alcohol. Yeast is actually a single cell microorganism, and if conditions are right, if there's enough air, if there's the right amount of sugar, and if the temperature is perfect, it will multiply every 90 minutes by budding to form a new cell. So if the number of yeast cells doubles every 90 minutes and we leave it for a week, by the end of that time, each individual yeast cell could turn into 5192 296 858 534 827 628 530 496 329 220 096 yeast cells. I'd be overrun by yeast, but the conditions are not perfect because they're not trying to produce yeast, they're trying to produce beer. So if you put this on a time lapse and you watch it over a whole week of it fermenting, you'll see at first there are lots and lots and lots of bubbles, and then it starts to slow down and eventually it stops and the yeast goes dormant and it all drops down to the bottom. Now we need to drain the beer off into sterile bottles. This is the bit most people want, but I'm only interested in the yeasty slurry at the bottom. That gets sent to the Vegemite factory. The first thing we need to do is heat this stuff up to kill the yeast, because we don't actually want live yeast in the spread. And this will also split open the yeast cells. I know this looks like caramel, but believe me, it stinks of beer. Now ideally I want to separate this out into solids and liquids, and to do that a centrifuge would be the ideal tool, but I don't have a centrifuge, so I'm going to attempt to make a homemade version of that. My pineapple corer makes the perfect size holes in this pool noodle for these tubes that I have to fit in. So let's fill them up with the yeast mixture, put the pool noodle into my washing machine, add the tubes, and put it on a spin cycle. It is spinning fast. I'm hoping this is enough to do the job. Unfortunately, the tubes have gone from being flat to being upright, which is not good, but let's see if it did anything or not. Look at that! It actually worked! That is awesome. I need to work on it a little bit to see if I can get them to stay flat, but that's a great start. It means we can tip off the clear liquid and leave the solids in the tube. It turns out putting a wet towel over the top of the tubes weighs them down and helps keep them flat, so the solids are just at the bottom, which makes it much easier to pour it off. By using the washing machine as a centrifuge, we've turned this into this and this. To make Vegemite, I am guessing we're going to need to boil this down to evaporate off some of the water and make it thicker. I walked away at this point not expecting that this would happen. So now I've lost some of the liquid. It's not like I can just get more of this stuff. It took a week to make. It would be a lot easier if I was just getting a delivery from a brewery, but I don't have that available to me. Vegemite is really thick, and the more I boil it down, it's not turning into a paste like this. It looks like the colour of Vegemite, but it's just not thick enough. I'm wondering if I let it cool down, if it will thicken up. No, it doesn't. So the texture's completely wrong, but to me this does taste like Vegemite, but let me get the experts to taste it.
It's got Vegemite hues.
Oh, it tastes like a chemical. Like, it has a little bit of Vegemite's kind of aftertaste.
It's quite Vegemite-y, just like that. It's almost a bit more meaty than Vegemite.
Let's see if it thickens up if I boil a little bit of it even more. It doesn't make a paste. Instead, it turns into this stretchy substance that's not at all like the texture of Vegemite. If we take another look at the ingredients to see what else is in it, it contains yeast extract, salt, mineral salts, malt extract, colour, flavours and B vitamins, and that's it. So there's nothing else in this that would thicken it up, which means they must be using that other portion of the yeast that we had. So let's tip that into a pan and boil it up to get the water out of it. And it does indeed thicken up into a paste that is about the consistency of Vegemite. But to me, this tastes so disgusting. If you thought Vegemite was bad, this is worse. It's like beery, chemically horrible. But let's see what Dave thinks.
Ugh. Ugh. Oh, yuck.
It tastes like beer mousse.
It's not Vegemite, is it?
No.
Oh, nasty chemical beer. Yuck.
I'm wondering if the type of hops and the flavour of the beer is affecting what that tastes like, and if you somehow need to wash that yeast or make a completely different type of beer. I don't have any expertise in beer and beer flavours, and I don't have another week to make another batch of it. So we're just going to have to use the other portion of it and add the other ingredients and see if that tastes close enough. Looking at the nutrition information panel, I can see how much sodium's in it, and from that I can calculate how much salt we need to add. Vegemite is really quite a salty spread, so it is a fair bit, and I know from the ingredients list that there is less malt extract in it than there is salt, so we'll just add a little bit of that and mix it all together, and then we'll put that on some toast.
It's pretty good. Tastes very similar to Vegemite. Maybe a little bit weaker in flavour.
It's not Vegemite. It's not bad.
Tastes very chemically.
It's also a bit too like gloopy. Whereas Vegemite is, you know, you can spread it quite thin like butter.
Tough crowd. So let me think about this. We started with the beer and we got the yeast slurry from the bottom, and then we spun it to separate it and boiled it to get these two parts. Well, this one nearly has the taste of Vegemite. This one has the texture, but it tastes horrible, possibly due to the hops in the beer. So what if we replaced that part with nutritional yeast flakes? These are deactivated yeast that has just been dried. And by adding water to it, we get a similar consistency to what we got from the beer. Now this tastes very cheesy on its own and definitely doesn't have the horrible chemical taste of this one. So let's mix some of these two together and see how that tastes.
That's pretty good. Very, very good actually. That tastes almost identical to Vegemite.
It's very similar. It's very close.
Yep. That's Vegemite. Yum.
Yay, I figured out a recipe that works for Vegemite. Now, I want to know, can we use the yeast extract to make something that tastes yummy to me? I know lots of people like Vegemite, not trying to offend you, but I want to make something that tastes good to me. Now, from tasting this stuff, I know that it itself is pretty strong, so I think it's going to work best if it's added to other things. I did a number of experiments and made a whole heap of recipes and found that this actually works really well as a soy sauce replacement, which is good for anyone who is allergic to soy sauce. I tried it in a dipping sauce for sushi.
The same chemical taste mixed with like a little bit of spice, but then also sour, but then also sweet. It's so bad.
Yeah, very nice.
And in a honey soy glaze on meat.
It's good. It's good. It probably needs a tad more salt to match the salt in the soy sauce, but yum. Yeah.
Not good.
It's good. I like it.
And the umami flavour in this is also useful in sweet dishes to bring down that sweetness a little bit. I tried it in some chocolate ganache.
Yum.
It almost just makes it taste like a darker chocolate, like it's got a little bit more bitterness.
Normal ganache can be a bit sickly sweet. That's sort of taken the sweet edge off it. It's actually really nice.
That's really good. I love that. That's better than normal chocolate ganache.
So that was a win. But if I had have added Vegemite to those recipes, I would not have liked it. It would have tasted way too Vegemite-y. And whenever they've released like Vegemite brownies or Vegemite chocolate, people are not into it. It just doesn't combine well, probably because of all of the salt. So if they want it to appeal to more people, keep this as it is for the lovers of Vegemite. But perhaps for the rest of us, take it back a step and give us a sauce that's not so concentrated and doesn't have all the salt in it, because this is a great addition to lots of recipes. Let me know if there's any other secret recipes you want me to try and figure out for you. And if you are a Vegemite fan, I do have some gear that we got from the 100-year celebration, some exclusive collectibles and stuff like that. If you want a chance to win those, head on over to Patreon to figure out how to do that. Speaking of patrons, this is a list of amazing people. They are absolute legends and they support this channel every month. Make it a great week by being kind to others, and I'll see you on Friday.